Welcome. In this video, I have the privilege of speaking with Scott Laughlin. Scott is a 20 plus year industry pro in SEO and product management. Scott currently runs BigStorm.media, an e-commerce and SEO agency that helps clients establish product market fit as a precursor to building and scaling growth for digital product experiences. Prior to Big Storm, Scott led product and marketing initiatives, e-commerce, marketplace, and SaaS platforms. His experience includes leading SEO at Walmart e-commerce, growth product at Hired, and established product market fit for a number of startups as founder, co-founder, and advisor. Scott has an MBA from Santa Clara University and lives in Spartanburg, South Carolina with his wife, daughter, and dog. Scott is a wealth of insight and information. He does an incredible job at breaking down product management in an accessible, relevant, and impactful way. I highly encourage you to check out the entire discussion. So without further ado, I give you Scott Laughlin. Scott, welcome. Good to connect with you.
Good to connect with you. Thanks for having me.
You got it, man. The first time we spoke, I was really impressed with your background. And right before we jumped on the line here live and we hit the red button, I was saying the world of product management is super interesting and it seems really critical, but at the same time, quite nebulous. And I'm wondering, am I alone in that? Perhaps there's others like me out there that find it interesting, feel like it's very important, but don't know a lot about it and where it fits into the overall ecosystem. Do you find that in your experience, or am I alone there?
No, you're not alone. There's, if you Google, there's tons of articles. You'll see headlines stating difference between product management and product design, or all these subdisciplines, and no one's really clear on where the lines are. Although they are clear. The lines are pretty clear once you get into it. But as someone on the outside looking in, it's murky, and you can see people trying to get into it, really trying to figure out, where the lines are and how that works. And it is different at pretty much every company you work at will have a different feel. But yeah, it's you're not alone.
What's the high level, the elevator pitch, the summary representation for the discipline to the non-initiated, to the layman such as myself? How is it the discipline framed, or at least in your head, is it framed?
Yeah, as a product manager, you're responsible for the success of the product, and so generally, often you're working with a designer and a developer, and you're responsible for the who. So like who is this for, and why? Why should they care? And then, and based on that, you'll get to the what. You collaborate on the what with design folks, and the how with engineering. So you got to think of those questions. Who we're building for, and why are we building this? And that can be a business case, or it can be a user story. As a millennial mom, I want to, some sort of. It's often stated as, as a person, as a persona, I want to, and then some action you want to do, so I can, and in some value statement of why it matters. So it's kind of the why should we care job, and don't really manage anything, but you work across organizations to get a lot of stuff done to influence. But basically, the short of it, and the part that I like, is really figuring out the who, like what segments are we going after and why, and then the value, like why should they care? How is this differentiated? Is what tasks are they trying to do that we can add value to? And it also delineates further into core product versus growth, and I'm more on the growth side. So then there's experimentation related to um, 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 optimizing growth funnels and user experience and all that. But basically, the short of it for me, and what I like is finding product market fit. So to do the research up front to really understand who you're building for and what their needs are and what their choices are and what their journey looks like and how you can improve that journey or add value in some way, then you're well on your road to delivering something of value out the gate rather than um, a process that lacks that kind of rigor. And you go out and you try things, you experiment, but it's a bit more painful and not in higher risk. So that's kind of the short of it is basically add some rigor to uh, build and launch things that are going to be more likely to succeed in the marketplace.
There's some that could be unpacked there. Specifically of interest would be the experimentation stuff, but also the rigor that you're talking about now that the front end, I think that would be cool to explore. Before we go further down the rabbit hole though, Scott, on this, on the discipline, on your experience, on your current work within that, I think it would be really cool to explore what led you to that. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people will see someone who has a really solid list of diverse experiences in a particular field, in adjacent fields, and has achieved a level of success there. And someone may be at the beginning of that journey or even contemplating starting that journey and thinking, how, having difficulty connecting point A to point B, or maybe even point A to Z, however you look at it. But if we could start with that origin story, what did your professional journey begin, and how did that lead you into this place?
Good question. Boy, let's see if how I can tell that story and make it, not make it interesting. But basically, I had it since undergrad. I wanted to do startup work or some business minded focus. And initially I wanted to do real estate development. And then as I got into marketing courses, I thought, well, that's pretty cool. I like that better. So I came out with a marketing background and then, so work experience and then an MBA and, basically, and from the MD during business school, this was towards the end of .com one. So it was a lot's changed since then, but basically we were really, I studied brand and we thought a lot about, brand experience and the brand as being the sum of experience across touch points. And it was a good model for thinking about how to add value, how you're perceived as a result of how consumers, business or consumer buyers and users interact with your product and service across all the different touch points. And so that was kind of the foundation for thinking about experience. Then getting into my career and applying the job as a marketing generalist and trying a few startups that I was too green to pull off, perhaps. I found my footing in SEO. And so after working on different sites and kind of moving from the content side of SEO to or the product side of SEO and how that works, some background, it is the larger the site, the more technical SEO matters. And so I needed to get the problems I was solving when moving from small sites to sites like Walmart, where I spent 5 years, are things like indexation and combined with user experience. And so I got into the world of interacting directly with development teams to, for the SEO requirements. But and then there was all this tension, interesting tension between what's good for search engines and what's good for users. You know, for example, a good designer will often publish an experience that looks beautiful and has very little content because that kind of distracts from the experience. But if no one finds the experience, it's is it valuable? So there's that attention. Oh yeah, we got to put some content on. We're going to put some things that may be a little ugly, but that make the experience discoverable. And noticing that tension, I thought that's an unhealthy tension. There's got to be a way to do this that is just a better experience. That's also good for search engines. So I took some UX courses and one in particular at UC Berkeley Extension. It was kind of a course on user experience design for product designers. But basically, it gave me a framework to think through, interviewing customers and defining requirements, and then hypothesizing solutions, and then taking that hypothesis and maybe doing a mock-up and running it by customers to getting feedback. It's that's a little off. The good thing we ran it by users and not the feedback. So that kind of process of refinement through basically talking to customers. And then the world of product and design really, the world of experience really became dominated by user experience design, which basically means that whole concept of brand experience across touch points moved from kind of the marketing and agency world to product world and the design world. So now instead of just thinking about what that should look like, there's a bit more of a discipline around how to actually define it and measure it and prioritize what gets built and what doesn't. So it's kind of an interesting full circle from an interest in brand as an expression of holistic experience and moving that into the space where you're actually working to build product that delivers that experience. And so that's kind of, there's 20 years of evolution there, trying to sum up with a few sentences. So but that's I think that gives a bit of a summary.
I should say so. I like what you said about the interesting tension between discoverability and user experience, and how oftentimes a designer will have, justifiably so, a bias towards the aesthetics and towards that user experience, and oftentimes will result to minimizing the content, the data on a page for, I would imagine, things like negative space and having more room for a composition to breathe. And there has to be a balance, though, because it could be the most beautiful landing page in the world or beautiful composition, but if no one ever sees it, is it that good?
Right.
It's really
Right,
interesting picture you painted there.
Yeah, for sure. There was a lot, a lot of cases there where that was the case. And so getting a little deeper into design and understanding what that should look like. I can't call myself an expert designer. It's just a handful of UX courses, but but I read a ton, and I'm always self-teaching, from now on for the foundation to try to figure out what the best practices are and what the frameworks are and how it works and had value. I still think of myself as a marketing guy in heart, with a product informed background. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing. It's changed over the discipline, like all other disciplines, I'd imagine, has changed a lot over the last couple of decades since Web 1 till now.
Yeah, right.
It probably changed a lot even over the last 12 months.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's a whole bunch happening with AI and everything else.
Uh, uh, as the story comes to from where it began till current day, or at least close to current day, I see there being two elements that were nudged at in your story just a moment ago. One of them is the balancing of team members and personalities. You imagine a designer with an engineer, and being in between that and managing the interests and such. I'm curious to hear your point of view on the team alignment front and principles that you've developed over time as a leader to maintain alignment in those cross-functional teams. But on the other side, I think what you've talked a few times about the brand experience, and brand being a holistic representation of all the touch points within an experience. I don't know if I've characterized that exactly right, but I'm interested. To me, that speaks to organizational visibility, being able to see all of that, because one touch point can only truly be understood within the context of how it's related to other touch points within a customer lifecycle. And although a single touch point, or even touch points within a given phase of a life cycle, may be relevant in their own right, just to zoom into each node, or each sub data set within each node, ultimately you need some form of a big picture to see how it all sort of weaves together, that holistic overview. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on either or both of those sort of fields, which is the leadership and cultural human piece of team alignment, and this structural mechanical piece of frameworks and like seeing the business through organizational visibility.
Really, well, good question. Let's see. There's a lot there. You can think of where to start into that. But I guess I'll describe maybe how I've seen um, this kind of work bifurcate across small versus large companies. And I think the larger company, I mean, like I was at Walmart a while ago now, and I know that, so I still know people there. They've come a long way. So I think their process resembles more of the startup world. But what I experienced at Walmart was really fascinating. They could turn on a dime and have you go after something, and there'd be literally a war room, and we'd go in, and yeah, from all the disciplines that were related would go to a kickoff meeting, and everyone kind of knew the assignment, and would go and offer their expertise, and they collaborate on this big initiative, especially within the marketing organization. Um, and and that was a lot of fun to see. The smaller companies, and that was a big ship to turn. It's pretty hard to get that kind of a culture built, and it had limitations because getting small things on the roadmap that were not that didn't have the flash and dash was a challenge. You had to work across multiple teams to get items on prioritized. But then in a smaller organization, that world's kind of evolved into where you work in pods. So now you have it's typical to have responsibility over a larger sphere, and then you have a designer and a developer, and the three of you collaborate. So there's alignment across the organization. You basically, you think of your large projects, which we call epics, as the big things that we want to accomplish. And then under an epic, there might be several smaller user stories that are basically features. That's on the product side. But I still like to think of product as including service, and as including the holistic experience, which extends which brings me back to that kind of blend of product and brand. But basically, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but for smaller companies, you can be pretty nimble and just go with the designer developer and start building things that's usually data driven, whether the data involves customer interviews or just really understanding how through metrics dashboards, funnel leakage, or where users are adopting or not adopting or having challenges with the process. Looking at that, you can pinpoint where to focus and prioritize what gets on the roadmap. But basically, the small nimble teams are pretty effective and a good way to go. And larger organizations have also adopted that model, but there's lots more stakeholders to contend with and lots more campaigning and convincing and communication, as you'd expect, to get alignment on the first place before diving into the weeds. I said a lot there.
I got the picture of the war room in my mind.
Oh
That's
yeah,
been pretty fun.
yeah,
Yes, cool.
yeah. Especially Black Friday would have you'd have a kickoff in August. And all wear ugly Christmas sweaters and
Nice.
the whole 9 yards, and from then on it was all hands on deck.
Go time.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. So you spoke to the human part, and I like the way that you segmented it through smaller and larger organizations. And it's really impressive to hear about the culture they built to turn on a dime at such a large company. Wild to even imagine that, much less live it. I'd imagine it's pretty wild. But what about the collateral piece, the framework piece, like the the decks and the docs and the sheets and the whiteboards? How do you manage the complexity and maintain visibility over all of that with a brain experience?
Good question. And so I like the smaller sphere where you kind of have control over your domain. But yes, it's also like more collaborative environments, the larger environments. And so I usually just keep a spreadsheet with my ethics and stories. But then as that as those matriculate and become more socialized within the organization, there's a bunch of tools that are out there. So Jira is kind of the one that people use, engineering organizations use, and Asana is one that marketing organizations use. And so often you're tasked with both. You have projects that you're posting in both Asana and Jira, and then there's a whole world of collaboration tools out there, but that's every company's different with the ones they use. But as far as the frameworks, I like to use a jobs to be done interview framework to really understand, what there's a lot of that captures. But basically, the idea is, consumers are going to hire your product to do a job, and so understanding what that is important. And the things that I kind of prioritize out of that are understanding, who is a customer, how are they segmented, how are they you may have several different types of customers, but there might be some things that differentiate them. And then what are the triggers? Like what triggered them to look for a solution in the first place? This is more for B2B with longer sales cycles. You're trying to understand that as opposed to consumer and e-commerce, which is, super quick and impulsive and, different models for the two markets. But thinking about triggers, so, and one example that comes to mind is in a fleet company that I worked for. They had, they were marketing fleet management software, so vehicle fleets for trucks and such. It's a platform to manage maintenance and some other things. Basically, for the smallest segment, you were either the trigger was that your spreadsheet wasn't working anymore. But why was it working? And you're either adding more users or adding more vehicles or trying to do some sort of integration. And so based on those kind of triggers, you could much more granularly define the segments that you're going after and then deliver something more valuable based on what's driving that. So, and in this particular case, I worked on onboarding. So it's a matter of giving each of those three segments the quickest path possible to getting value out of the product without having to learn all the other things that are not relevant. It's that dopamine hit and getting them hooked without a lot of friction that'll just result in bounce rate. So that's one example. And then, other example, the consumer side, Walmart, we did a ton with different segments. Like we had experiences for moms where you'd sign up for pregnant moms. Every little step was this one example where, so each week of a pregnancy, you'd get custom curated information that was relevant to what you're going through in that process. And it was useful for, it solved some problems, but it also, merchandised product in a way that was helpful. And that was interesting to see those kind of products come to life and experiences. So there's so many tools and frameworks. We could go into them, but I think from a higher level, I think it's really about finding ways to really understand the specific segments that are most important to stir. And, what are they required? What do they need? And what are their choices? Like what are you up against in terms of competition? How do you differentiate yourself and add really clear and distinct value based on what you know about the market? And going from there, is kind of the crux of it all.
Thanks for sharing that. The segment selection process, sometimes I would imagine is self-evident. It's very obvious. Pregnant mothers, for example,
Right.
You have a tool that supports that's pregnant moms. That's pretty self-evident, but other times maybe not so obvious out of the gates. I wonder what the customer segment selection process is like when there's uncertainty associated with it at the beginning.
Yeah. Part of that UX course, I wanted to work on an experience. I wanted to make unemployment easier. So I thought, well, what is that? I thought And I was thinking, oh, this will be an easy project. If you if you lose your job, it's terrible. But to claim unemployment, there's all these forms and they're repetitive, and so having automating that would be valuable. So I put together that as a hypothesis, and it wasn't necessarily the segment. Oh, well, actually, yeah. So the segment was broadly, people who were suddenly unemployed and eligible for um, state unemployment insurance. And so I conducted interviews to confirm, hey, is this right? Is this your problem? Does this add value? And not suggesting that, but trying to basically let them talk to see if their stories and their pain matched what I expected it to be. So I thought intuitively, oh, it's a pretty obvious segment. But at the end of the interviews, I found that no, that's just not it. They don't care. It's really easy to fill out the forms for most people. It's just not what they think about. But the segments were pretty distinct. So if you were a a young engineer and you lost your job, the common response is, I'm going to go travel for 3 months and then I'll go look. And if you're a full nester with a kid in college, you are sweating. It was extreme anxiety around that. So, the segments became apparent based on interviews that revealed the actual pain. And so I ended up pivoting that product to find a way to sell, long story short, private unemployment insurance as a benefit offered by employers. And the idea is that it would improve employer brand, and it would be something that would, because employers, yeah, boy, talking to people on both sides of the equation, it's just a painful experience everywhere. And it's that dirty little thing that no one wants to talk about, but everybody experiences. Everyone's in denial about it, that layoffs happen, but they do. And so through that course and through doing interviews, I started with what I thought was an obvious assumption, and use the process to ask questions and talk to people and listen to stories, and emerge with a completely different and better informed understanding of the problem, which is really the product role is to find the problem and not the solution, which is very hard to refrain from doing. But basically, as a product, firstly, you're supposed to really frame and really understand whose problem are we solving, and is it worth solving, and is it more worth solving than the other problems that are worth solving. So that's how you prioritize them. And then back to your earlier question about how you structure the team and work with the team. Yeah, it's really about letting experts be experts. So work with your designer and let them design the solution of the what, and then work with your engineering team to collaborate on the how. And through those conversations, you'll come up with the most efficient way to solve that problem faster and for the right market, and solve the right problem. So that's kind of the round and round of it all. But yeah, if that
brought
makes
us full
sense.
circle there.
Yeah, exactly. It's simple and complex, and it's easy to get lost in the complexity, and ultimately it's about delivering products efficiently that are going to be successful. How do you do that? I think without kind of some of those methodologies, it's there's a lot more intuition and testing and pivots and it's expensive, and R&D can be very expensive if it's not, well, regardless, but especially if it's not surrounded with some of the ever evolving processes that make that a little more reliable. Yeah.
You've reminded me a few times in this discussion about a quote from the guy who is behind the business model canvas, Alexander Osterwald. He says the number one job of an entrepreneur is to reduce risk and uncertainty.
There you go. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Facing a lot more pain than you may have to.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I started out with doing a couple of startups before I knew what I knew. And some of them did okay as solo businesses, but none of them were blockbusters. And that's why one of the motivations for diving deeper into product and kind of learning that discipline is that, I still want to do that or help other people do that in a way that's just more efficient. So going in and, the good entrepreneur really, if they're needs to be able to raise money. That's probably more important than getting the product right. And so, which is, kind of a sad reality, but yeah, you got to be able to raise money. And so if you're good at raising money, but you're okay at getting the product right, then, partnering with someone with a product background can help you dial that in. So now you've got, the right product, solving the right problem for the right consumers. And then you got someone else who can get the money to make it happen. That's a good combination.
That's interesting. Earlier, we talked about how much has changed over the last 2 decades. And even in the last year, it seems like the rate of change has been just accelerating at a breakneck pace. To even bring up the generative AI explosion that we're all living through right now, it almost seems cliche. It's most professionals that are really playing the game are not just inundated with it, but adopting it as fast as they can and finding ways to leverage the tools and understand the tools. And when you think of that old saying of we skate to where the puck is going, what's your view, grounded in your experience and your current positioning in the world, seeing the just unbelievable volatility at a macro level we're facing, and what's your view on where the puck is going within the context of business and how these emerging technologies, specifically speaking to generative AI, will impact us as individuals and as collectives within organizations?
Yeah. It's anybody's guess. I got some thoughts on that. We were watching comedy last night, watching stand-up comedy on Netflix, and there was a guy from China, and his stick was as a first-generation American, is basically making fun of America and how impatient we are. And the joke was that Amazon is it that compared to what it's like to get what you need in a different country, we're so impatient. And he was going off on Amazon and how next day, that's too slow. I can't have next day. I want it in my hand. And he was like, no, 2-hour delivery. I want 2-hour delivery. That's the thing that I want. And then he was joking. He said, I want you to break in my house and put the food in my mouth. And then he said, I want you to know what I'm going to need before I know that I need it, and give it to me that way. And that was a maybe it was a couple of years ago, so it was a joke, but I think that's the direction AI is going to go. It's anticipating. I think it's going to be, one application is, this sort of idea of, uh, just removing. I mean, right now, if you want something, you've got to look for it and order it, um, and we're let up within some bounds. I don't know how this will work, but you're, the Internet of Things is already trying to do that, but imagine Internet of Things powered with AI. I mean, there's just, I can't imagine, or I can imagine, but I can and can't imagine what it's going to be like. I just think that, um, the movements would hopefully be around, anticipating needs. So you just don't need to spend time doing most of the things you spend time, you want to do the fun thing and you got to do all the things to prepare for the fun thing. Whether it's cooking dinner or going on a trip or I don't know, whatever it is. I think if the AI knows you're going to go on a trip, I don't know, just start solving that for you, booking your flights and your cars. And I don't know, I think there's some role for AI to basically anticipate and and do tasks. Right now, you gotta know how to use it. Gotta figure out how the prompts are like. It's very basic. It's very much an innovator's world. You love tech, shiny objects, and you want to learn the thing. But as it moves towards, late majority or early majority, that sort of crossing the chasm thing, it's got to be, take forms that are seamless. I think the Internet of Things powered by AI has got to be something. Uh, but yeah, I mean, speaking more to right now with an SEO background, there's this discussion of, how do you use AI for content? Because Google's saying that they don't want machine generated content. They'll discount it, but then you run tests to see, well, can they really tell? It's so you've got machines trying to out trick machines. You got this machine writing content that's undetectable by another machine, then they've got to update that machine to learn how the other machine tries to trick it. And basically, today, AI is generative AI specifically to generate content ideas and first drafts, and then you can actually find little gig jobs to then edit those so that they have a personal touch, so that the end product is human touched. And so, but there's a lot of weird steps, and it's messy and evolving fast, and there's tons of people building apps and trying to leverage this in new ways, and it's dizzying, but it's also exciting. There's nobody knows exactly where it's going to go, but and some people are doomsdayists, like Elon Musk has some things to say about it, and others like Bill Gates think it's really going to be have a humanitarian impact potentially. There's opinions all over the map, but basically, this is the next boom. And I think it'll make, so I'm old enough to know what life was like before the internet. And I can't imagine. I lost my phone for a week and it was just awful. I was traveling. And so that sort of idea of I was fine without a phone before that was the thing, and now I'm not. I think AI and its next in future iteration will be indispensable, but I don't know what forms that'll take. People are actively working on that.
try to figure that out. But it's kind of fun.
Dizzying and exciting. I agree with
Yes. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
that. Scott,
for sure.
thank you for taking the time to share your origin story. You're a wealth of insight and knowledge. I appreciate that. I respect that. And I actually had a lot of fun hearing your point of view across the multiple areas we covered today.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed being on your cast. It's good. Thank you.
What didn't we discuss or unpack that we maybe should have, or at least could do in the next one?
Oh man. Good question. That's a lot of stuff. I think that's a good question. I think I guess one thing we talked about when we first met was I'm curious, and actually reached out to you to schedule a discovery interview, which we ended up not having because it wasn't the right fit, and I still need to schedule these calls. But I want to talk to agencies who are doing basically building experiences for company founders, for innovators, and I'm curious to what degree that kind of product rigor is present or not present. I'm thinking about partnering with agencies to do like product market fit as a service, just kind of adding the research piece to it. So it would be interesting maybe to explore, what kinds of digital products succeed versus fail, and are there specific segments, are there specific types of creators that have more success than others, and what do they have in common, and how can we kind of take what works and more innovator set and apply and monetize that, and for groups that are behind the curve, right? Just background, I spent most of my career in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, and we moved to South Carolina during the pandemic for family reasons, and it was really interesting. Even the job titles are different. No one talks about digital marketing in the Bay Area. They don't talk about marketing. Within marketing, it's you're doing growth, or you're doing brand, or you're doing product, or you're doing design, or you're doing engineering, or you're doing like customer success. But out here, the titles are digital marketing specialists, which it's interesting. It's so just identifying an innovator versus kind of an early majority mindset in terms of how even work is divided is interesting, and I'd be curious to understand success and failure rates and causes for that within those different spheres, and if there's some lessons learned that can be ported over to help build groups.
Very cool. We have overlapping interest in that regard.
Yeah. We talked about last time. Yeah, for sure.
So now we have some guide rails for our next discussion.
Perhaps. Yeah. Hopefully between now and then I'll have done some research. I might have beginnings of answers to that. Great.
Scott, it was a pleasure speaking to you today.
All right. Likewise.
See you next time.